What's up, YouTube? Thanks for clicking on my video. Today we're going to be looking at another way to create stuff for dimensions and, make something kind of cool like this. Uh, so let's minimize that and open up Blender. So this is just me doing something really awful, so I'm just going to delete it. Go to File, New. I'm just going to make a new one so we can start from scratch. Discard changes. All right, you guys, so if you open up Blender, you're going to start with this scene, hit X, and we're going to delete the cube. Hit Shift A, and we're going to add a UV sphere. This is what we're going to be sculpting on. Zoom in a little bit so we can look a little closer at it. Now you're going to want to come up here because we're going to be sculpting. So we're going to hit the Sculpting tab, and now we are in the Sculpting view. Over here, we've got all our different tools that we can use, and this is the preview window that talks about what types of tools there are. So I'm just going to start with the first one that it starts with, and if I do this, it kind of makes changes to the mesh, but I don't know, not a lot's really happening. So part of that is because my mesh itself is not that detailed, so it can only use these points, to have detail. So in order to make that different, I'm going to come over here to this setting and hit Dyn Top, I guess is what it's called, and click OK. And now when I do it, it's a little bit more dynamic when I click on it, and it's much more interesting. But it's still kind of blocky. It still doesn't necessarily look like I want, so I'm going to hit Command Z, go backwards, and then I'm going to come up here, drop down this menu, and change its pixel radius to something more like 2. And now when I do it, oh look, there you can see it's got a lot more detail. And if I show you the wireframe view, it has actually added much more detail to the mesh. So like wherever you put your thing, it adds detail to the mesh. Alright, so I'm going to go back into solid view. I'm going to zoom out. And I don't know, I'm just going to kind of play with these tools a little bit and sculpt something awful. So that was the first tool. It's called the Draw tool. You can increase its intensity, so it's really intense. You can also make it do subtractions instead of additions, so you can pull away. It's very cool. But I don't know, I kind of want to make this into a head, so a sphere isn't really a good form for a head. So I'm going to need to tug it down. I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to increase my radius. You can also increase your brush radius just like in Photoshop or Adobe. I'm just going to drag this. No, wait, hang on, I want to use a different tool. There, this one. That's the one. Because this one is going to pull the mesh a lot better. Crap. Just, where's the front? That's the back. Okay, so the front is here. It's going to shape it. Yeah, that's good enough. That's like a face. Alright, let's begin. Let's start sculpting. This brush is the clay. You can add some clay to it. I'm just going to drop its radius. Increase its strength by a lot. Increase its radius. I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit as I'm sculpting. This isn't so much a sculpting class as it is just kind of going over these tools and showing some crazy things you can do with it. So I might be fast forwarding through some of this a little bit. I'm just kind of softening up the mesh for where I want to put my face. And we're getting some artifacts here, and I'm going to show you how to clean that up too. Right now I'm just kind of working through it. Go to the clay strip, lay down some clay strips just to really help format my face. And this is going to be like the jawline roughly. And this is too long, so I need to flatten that out. I'm going to go over my flatten tool. Yeah, this is probably really exciting for you guys to watch. Again, this is Blender. If you saw my last video, Blender is a free program. Please go download it. It's very powerful. And if you're working with Adobe Dimensions, you got to stop using Photoshop, okay? It's not a real 3D program. Stop making 3D stuff with Photoshop. It's bad. This is a real 3D program, and you can just get it and start using it today. There's all kinds of people who probably can explain these tools a lot better than me. I'm just kind of showing some really stupid... You know what? Let me bump up this strength. What am I doing? Taking too long here. Alright, so I'm really flattening this out. I'm kind of getting the jawline in. flatten that out. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to add more clay to him. So I'm going to come over here to my clay blob, and I'm just going to give him like a nose. Just build him a nose, something, just, yeah. Totally, definitely. This will probably be his lips. Why not? So I'm going to make some eyes. We've got the inflate tool. Let's make it to subtract instead of add, and increase its strength really high. And now when we do this, eyeballs go inward. He's got eyeballs. I'm going to make it a little smaller. Just kind of like cavern this out a little more. Yeah, so, I don't know. That's pretty close. Let's see what some of this other stuff does. So we've got fill. Let's increase its strength to see what this does. Not super sure what this is doing. I can kind of see some stuff, but I guess it's like filling in where I already laid clay because it's not doing anything up here. So let's try this one. I guess you can scrape through what you've already laid out. This one is smooth, so we're just going to smooth the rest of his head. Just make this a lot bigger. Yes. Yes, that is definitely the shape of a head. Let me add some clay to it. Ooh, it's lagging a little. Hang on, just bear with me. God. Okay, yeah, totally. He needs a mouth now. Let's give him a mouth. I'm just going to go over here to the crease tool, make it subtract, drop this brush radius really tiny, make its strength super hard. I'm just going to make him a mouth. Just dig in. Yeah, just dig it in. Yeah, totally. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to spend a ton of time sculpting. Oh god, this is getting bad. Let's give you some hair. You need some hair. This is obviously not the right way to make hair. This is a fun brush though. You can just sort of like pull stuff off and it just sort of does a really good job of making itself. This is sort of like, does a little similar but sort of different, much smaller. It's like a smudge thing. There's this one, which also does the same, but it's more of like a straight tool, as opposed to where you can really curve stuff around with this one. So this one, well, I'm going too fast here. As you can see, if you go a little slower, you can really almost endlessly play with it. If you make the radius even bigger, obviously it is a lot easier to work with. Go a little slow. Just kind of looping around. Oh, yeah, I don't know. Just take your time. Totally, you know. Oh, this is, oh man, this is ugly. Ugh. I am not a fan of what I'm doing right now. So the pinch tool is a good way to, I guess, make a crease. Let's bump up its strength super high. I need my bigger brush. There. Increase its radius. It's going to crease up his lips. And I'm also going to make this a lot smaller, just so I can get a little bit more detail through it. I'm just going to go to smooth. Just kind of smooth this all out a little bit. Drop its strength. I don't know. This is really ugly. I don't recommend you doing exactly what I did, but you know, just have some fun with the tools. You know what I mean? Let's give him a neck. Oof, it's a bad neck. Give him some shoulders. You know? Okay. Okay. I don't know. All right. So if you decided that you like what you made, just come over here to File and Export Wavefront OBJ. And I'm going to go to my desktop. I've already got an unnamed one, so I'm just going to give it a number, obj1, and then I'm going to click Enter twice to save it. Let's just see what we did. And again, I really recommend just kind of finding other people's sculpting tutorials for Blender. It's something I mess around with a lot, but for a lot of what I do professionally, I don't tend to sculpt. It's a lot more of the extrusion tool and making things that have to actually be well measured against a real life product. So now that that's exported, we're going to open up dimensions, and I'm just going to leave this guy here because I kind of like how he looks there. I'm going to turn off some of my settings, make that more normal, and Command I, and I'm going to bring in my thing. Hit F to find it. So that's where it is. If you hold down if you right click in the scene, you can rotate. So he's sitting underneath the ground plane. So I can drag him up by hitting V to bring up my thing. I can drag him up to the plane, or I can just click this button, which will just drop him in the plane, and then click F to bring him to center again. Zoom out a little. And we're just going to move the camera just so he's a little bit more in center. And, you know, this actually looks a little bit more interesting in the more polished render than I had expected, you know? It could just be me, but that's actually pretty interesting looking. So let's give him a texture. See how he looks in gold. Computer's going a little slow because I'm recording and I've got a couple programs open. Just, you know, close stuff that you don't need. Let's change the ground plane a little bit. It's a little bit too reflective. I'm going to drop that. And let's try a different texture. Let's put on something like that's got a bunch of weird stuff in it. See what it looks like. Because part of the thing you're going to find out when you're making your own models is having these materials map correctly it's probably not going to happen. And so, why isn't this working? Did it not work? Oh, I'm not on my thing. Here, let's try this one. There it goes. No? Okay, there it goes. Now, we have the tile, and it's on this guy, and it just looks blue right now. And that doesn't really look what we want to. And if we do the same thing, and we just put it on just anything really, I just want to show you how different it looks. Wow, that's a big thing. Let's make them smaller. V, grab them, drag them this way. So if you put that same material on this box, you can see there's tiles, and there's no tiles here. So how do we fix this? We can't really, like, it's trying to map it against the mesh, and the mesh is probably a mess. So we want to go up here, make sure it's selected, go up into Object, and generate UVs. And it's going to take a minute. Just let it do its thing, and it's going to generate its UVs. Alright, so finished up, and that took a really long time. But as you can see, we got some of these lines appearing in here, much like it's appearing in here. It doesn't look super terrific quite yet. They're still having some problems, but this is obviously much better. And, I mean, come on, just this whole thing is a mess. Like, the fact that it's showing up at all, I'm just impressed. But we can kind of probably help it out a little bit if we just potentially make this a 2 for both of them. And we get a little bit more of a nicer wrap of the mesh. Obviously, there's still some problem areas, but come on, you wouldn't really make something like this in a professional setting. So you can cut me some slack. So yeah, let's just kind of mess around with it. Let's get rid of this box. And I'm going to bring back my other guy. And I'm going to drag this guy over. And I'm going to rotate them so they both look the same way. I don't know, I'm just going to be, at this point, setting them up for a render. And I'm going to doing a cool, some interesting things with the focus blur on the camera. Yeah, so, okay, the setting's about, like, where, I guess, it's interesting. I don't know. I'm just going to make them both, like, the same texture. Yeah, that's really stupid. Okay. Let's go to the camera. Let's turn on focus blur. Set a focal point to... Clicking this lets you set the focal point. When you click out here, I mean, that's where it chooses where the focal point is. So let's expand this so we can actually see a good blur. We got some blur. Obviously dropping this to 0 gets no blur on it. Putting this up all the way obviously gives it way too much blur, but sometimes a lot of blur can look pretty artsy. And, it's kind of artsy. What if we can make it more artsy? Let's make this field of view ridiculous. As you can see, when you increase the field of view, they become smaller. But if we hit F to center the selection, it's very dramatic. So it still looks kind of far away. I'm going to zoom in a little more. Put that there, right click, and rotate. And then I'm going to drag them up a little higher. Zoom in some more. Move this guy's about there. And, just kind of rotate a little bit. Just trying to center them, something that's just somewhat okay for me. Alright, so let's turn up the blur amount. And I think what you'll notice is with the field of view up really high, even a little bit of blur, 2.4, it does a lot. So like the bigger this field of view, the more depth that the blur can access. Honestly, I feel like it does too much a lot of the time, you know? But let's just make it even more. Let's see how crazy we can get with this. I'm going to reposition the focal point to about something different. Oh man, it looks really crazy. Wow. This is going to be bonkers. Alright, so this is probably the point where I'm going to stop the recording and just pick up where the renders are done. Okay, so my render's finished, and these are just like the two things. And basically, they're all, I think these are both objectively bad sculptures, really bad 3D sculptures. And these are how the renders came out. This was the first render. It's grainy because I did it in medium, and I decided that after doing that, I was like, oh, well, I should probably do some high quality ones so you can see what it does for high quality, because, this is super grainy. The other one I did, this was the first sculpture, not the one you guys got to see me make. It was the one I first attempted to make, and then the video recording got messed up. So this one is a high quality render, and as you can see, it shows a lot more detail. And this was the sculpture I made with you guys, and this is the high quality render, lots of detail in here. And I was just this is just messing with focus blur, and it's just kind of like, I feel like this is very kind of interesting. I think if this were a high quality render, it could actually be a pretty interesting piece. This one's also kind of cool. I don't know. This one's a bit scary. Like, I feel like if you saw this peering at you from your closet, I'd probably like freak out. But yeah, here's the Photoshop version. Comes with and without a background, so we could probably put a different background color in. Do some sort of like light adjustments. Bring it into there. Make it a little darker. I don't know. This is something. Yeah. So obviously your render is just a photograph of your piece. You're always going to want to go in and make adjustments to whatever photographs you take using your type of photo program. So, change colors. And if you're not happy with the lights and darks, you can obviously adjust that stuff in post. I would recommend doing it more in post rather than trying to get your darks and your lights exactly at the intensity you want them at in program. Because if you're forcing it to do something, then it's just kind of going to be pretty... It's probably not going to end up doing consistently what you want it to do. It's better to get a photograph that has a well range of good lights, mids, lows, and all that stuff, rather than just being too saturated in it, and then doing your saturations in post. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how you can go from Blender to make something that I would say is objectively not good, objectively a bad thing to have made and to show people. I shouldn't have shown you that. To do something that's sort of interesting and mysterious, and might cause a bit of intrigue into a viewer. Yeah, Adobe Dimensions is pretty awesome. Like all we did was just slap on a texture and mess with the focus blur, and it took a really bad thing, and it made it look pretty interesting. So, thanks for tuning in. I hope this got you a lot more excited about Blender and the things that you can do for Blender, and get that and import that what you made for Blender into Adobe Dimensions for your professional work. This is not professional work. So yeah, be sure to smash those buttons. Tune in for the next ones as I hopefully do better info. I don't know, I'm a little disappointed with myself on this one, so yeah. Okay. Have a great day.